Welcome back to the shadows. Don't worry, they've been waiting for you.
In every human being, there is a shadow. Carl Jung did not invent it, he only gave it a name. Nietzsche did not escape it, he wrestled with it until it almost broke him. And you carry it, even now. The shadow is not just darkness. It is your reflection in the night. Everything you deny, everything you fear, everything you blame on others lives here. Think about the moments when someone irritates you instantly, without reason. Think about the faces that trigger your contempt or your secret envy. These are not accidents. They are mirrors. They are fragments of your own rejected self, walking around in other bodies. Look closely, because if you do not face it, it will face you. And death itself will be the mirror. Jung saw the shadow as the buried half of the psyche. It is not evil in itself. It is raw potential, tangled with fear, rage, hunger, and desire. When we repress it, it does not vanish. It hides. It leaks. It breaks through the surface in disguise. You can hear it in the way a moralist preaches against sins he secretly dreams of. You can see it in the way a man despises the weakness in others while drowning in his own. The shadow is projection. You hate in others what you cannot accept in yourself. That is why it is so dangerous. Because it does not die in silence. It waits. It waits in your dreams. It waits in your sudden fits of rage. It waits in the fantasies you dismiss but cannot erase. It waits in the slips of the tongue that reveal too much. The shadow is not gone. It is simply patient. And patience is its most terrifying weapon. But here is the paradox. If you confront it, if you turn and look directly into its eyes, the shadow is not your executioner. It is your hidden ally. Because inside the darkness is not only fear, but energy. Inside the rage is not only violence, but courage. Inside the hunger is not only greed, but drive. The shadow is the part of you that refused to be domesticated. It is the wolf at the edge of your civilized mask. Most people live as if the wolf must be caged forever. They live in denial. They polish their masks. They build fragile identities of politeness, virtue, conformity. But the wolf does not die because you pretend. It watches. It waits. And one day, it breaks free. You can see it in history. The politician who builds a reputation for purity only to be destroyed by his secret life. The preacher who condemns sin while drowning in his own. The kind neighbor who suddenly erupts in violence no one imagined. This is the shadow breaking through the mask. And the cost of repression is always higher than the cost of confrontation. So what do? We do what Jung demanded, we integrate. We bring the shadow closer. We listen to its voice instead of pretending it is not there. We admit the envy, the lust, the rage, the hunger, not to be consumed by them, but to learn what they carry. Because without darkness, you have no depth. Without rage, you have no courage. Without hunger, you have no ambition. Without shadow, your light is only a mask. And Nietzsche? He knew the same truth in his own way. He wrote of the abyss and warned us, when you stare into it, it stares back. That abyss is not just the world, it is you. It is the part of you fear to meet. And yet, without stepping into it, you will never find your strength. The night teaches what daylight hides. And the shadow is always waiting. Most people believe they are good because they avoid what they fear. But the truth is simpler, they have never met their own shadow in full daylight. They cover it with work, with routines, with distractions. They drown it in endless talk about values and morals. But at night, when the mask slips, the shadow waits. Ask yourself, who are you when no one is watching? What desires burn in silence, never spoken? What memories haunt you that you never confess? That is the shape of your shadow. Jung warned us that the more we repress, the more violent the return will be. A man who never admits his anger becomes consumed by rage. A woman who hides her envy begins to poison every friendship. A society that denies its cruelty will turn it loose in war. The shadow does not ask for permission. It does not care about the image you build. It does not care about the stories you tell yourself. It is older, deeper, and more honest than your mask. Nietzsche understood this too. He despised the hollow virtue of those who refused to acknowledge their darker drives. He saw morality not as purity, but as camouflage. The weak called their fear goodness. The resentful called their hatred justice. For him, the shadow was not an enemy to be destroyed, but the raw material for transformation. And yet, how many dare to face it? How many can sit in silence and say, "Yes, I am capable of cruelty. Yes, I am capable of deceit. Yes, I am capable of desire that terrifies me." How many can admit this without collapsing in shame? Most prefer to hide. But hiding has a cost. Every time you push the shadow down, it grows heavier. Every time you deny it, it becomes less human, more beast. Until one day, the beast does not ask. It takes. Think of history again. The saint who preached compassion only to be revealed as a hypocrite. The leader who promised order but unleashed chaos. The neighbor who seemed gentle but hid violence for decades. Each story is a warning. The shadow cannot be buried alive. So what is the way forward? Jung insisted on individuation, not perfection, not purity, but wholeness. To be whole, you must take back the parts of yourself you abandoned. You must admit the rage, the lust, the fear, the hunger, and then learn to hold them without being consumed. To integrate the shadow is to accept that you are more than the mask. It is to admit that the line between light and dark does not run between you and the world, it runs straight through your own soul. And here lies the secret: the shadow, when faced, is not only darkness. It is also the gateway to creativity, to strength, to freedom. Without the shadow, you are only half alive. With it, you are dangerous, but you are real. So the question is not, do you have a shadow? The question is, will you face it before it faces you? Nietzsche lived with death as a daily companion. His body was fragile, his health collapsing, his eyes failing, his head burning with pain. He did not write about mortality as an idea for philosophers to debate. He wrote it as a man staring into the abyss every morning. For him, death was not a horizon far away. It was a shadow in the room. This shadow shaped his thought. He saw that the presence of death gives life its gravity. Imagine existence without an ending, no urgency, no risk, no weight. If we could live forever, every choice would dissolve into meaninglessness. But because we die, every choice burns with consequence. Every yes, every no, every silence becomes irreversible. That is why Nietzsche's question was not how do we avoid death, but how do we live with it? And his answer came in the form of a terrifying challenge: the eternal recurrence. He asked, what if this life, exactly as it is, had to be lived again and again for eternity? Every pain, every mistake, every humiliation, every joy, every small act of courage. Could you embrace it? Could you love it enough to say, yes, once more? Or would you curse existence itself? The eternal recurrence is not a theory of the universe. It is a psychological mirror. It forces you to face your life as if death itself asked, was it worth it? If you recoil, if you cannot imagine saying yes, then you are betraying yourself. But if you can affirm it, if you can accept even the suffering, then you are free. Nietzsche's struggle with death was not about denying it. It was about burning so fiercely in the face of it that life itself became a yes. He called it amor fati, the love of fate. To look at everything that has been given to you, pain, loss, betrayal, joy, and say, this too I choose. But do not misunderstand. Nietzsche was not naive. He knew the price of such affirmation. He lived alone, broken in health, misunderstood by his time. He collapsed into madness at the end of his life. His yes to life was forged in the same fire as his suffering. That is why it still burns. That is why it still wounds us when we read him. Death, for Nietzsche, was not only an enemy. It was the test. It was the one fact that stripped away illusions. It revealed whether your life was cowardice or creation, and this is where the weight of his thought strikes us. For Nietzsche, death was not a question for priests, nor a puzzle for scientists. It was the furnace in which every philosophy is tested. Remove death, and the courage of your choices disappears. Remove death, and your words become only decoration. To struggle with death, then, is to struggle with honesty. To ask yourself, if I were to vanish tomorrow, would this life still be enough? Or have I lived only in waiting, always postponing the moment of truth? Most people postpone. They say, tomorrow I will be brave. Tomorrow I will speak the truth. Tomorrow I will change. But Nietzsche knew that tomorrow is already claimed by death. The only time untouched is now. This is why his challenge is so merciless. Eternal recurrence is not meant to comfort you. It is meant to strip away excuses. Could you endure the thought that every compromise, every silence, every mischance would echo for eternity? Could you carry that weight without breaking? And yet, there is something liberating in this cruelty. If you can say yes to recurrence, then no moment is wasted. Even pain becomes part of the dance. Even loss becomes part of the music. Nothing is meaningless because everything repeats. Amor fati, the love of fate, is not a slogan. It is a discipline of fire. To look at your scars and say, you will return, and I accept you. To look at your joy and say, you too will return, and I embrace you. To look at your whole life, with all its cracks, and still declare, once more. This is what Nietzsche meant by becoming who you are. Not by escaping death, but by standing inside its shadow without retreat. To carve meaning into a life that will be tested, again and again, by the only judge that cannot be deceived, death itself. For Jung, death was never just an ending. It was an archetype, a force that appeared in dreams, myths, and symbols across cultures. Wherever human beings told stories, death was never silent. It wore masks. It took the form of the reaper, the ferryman, the god of the underworld, the mother who devours and gives birth again. Why? Because the psyche cannot face death as simple nothingness. It transforms it into image, into ritual, into meaning. We bury our dead not only to honor them, but to remind ourselves that endings are also beginnings. The tomb and the womb are closer than we want to believe. Jung saw that people who repress the fear of death are haunted by it in disguise. The dream of falling, the dream of losing teeth, the dream of endless darkness, all of them are rehearsals. The unconscious prepares us for the one event we cannot escape. But to repress is to suffer twice. First in fear, and then in reality. To confront is to suffer once, but to be transformed in the process. That is why so many myths of death are also myths of rebirth. Osiris torn apart, only to rise again. Christ crucified, only to return. The phoenix reduced to ash, only to burst into flame. Jung did not take these literally. He saw them as maps of the psyche. Each of us must face a death within, a collapse of the old self, if something new is to be born. This is why death carries both terror and promise. Terror, because the ego clings to what it knows. Promise, because the unconscious knows renewal. The seed must break for the tree to rise. The night must fall for the dawn to come. So to struggle with death is not only to resist it, but to enter into dialogue with it. To ask, what must end in me, so that something deeper can live? Jung would say, the shadow must die as an enemy, so it can live as a guide. The mask must die as an illusion, so the soul can breathe. The shallow self must die, so the true self can be born. In this sense, death is not against us. It is our final initiation. So what do Nietzsche and Jung teach us when their voices are placed side by side? Nietzsche forces us to face death as the test of our life. Can you affirm it, every wound, every joy, every moment, as if it would return eternally? Jung shows us that death is not only the test, but also the transformation. It strips away illusions, but it also plants the seed of rebirth. Together they remind us the end is not negotiable. You will vanish. I will vanish. Every mask will fall. But within that certainty lies the chance for something greater: honesty, courage, wholeness. Death is not simply the enemy. It is the shadow's final shape, the fire that burns away what is false, the teacher that forces us to become real. And if we can face it, perhaps we can also learn to live. What, then, is the meaning of this struggle? To live under the shadow of death is not to despair. It is to be reminded every hour of what cannot be postponed. Death says, decide, create, speak, love. Do not wait. Nietzsche answered with his fierce yes, a yes that burned even as his body collapsed. Jung answered with his symbols of renewal, death as the gateway to transformation. Both voices, so different, echo the same command: do not hide. Because death is already here. In the lines on your face, in the fading of your strength, in the silence that waits after every heartbeat. To deny it is to waste the only gift you have. To face it is to discover what that gift is worth. So the question remains, not will you die, but will you live before you do? But what does integration look like? It is not a clean process. It is not a moment of enlightenment where everything falls into place. It is messy, painful, full of contradiction. Because to integrate the second life, you must admit things about yourself you would rather not see. The envy toward your friend's success. The aggression behind your smile. The loneliness that hides beneath your work. The fear that drives your morality. All of these are part of the hidden life. To integrate them is not to indulge them, but to own them. To say, this too is me. Jung described individuation as a descent before it is an ascent. A descent into the underworld of the psyche, where you meet not only your fears, but also your unlived potential. Because the shadow does not only contain what is shameful, it also holds what is powerful. The creativity you suppressed because it was not approved. The strength you denied because it frightened others. The passions you buried because they threatened your mask. Integration means reclaiming this potential. It means that the artist must risk being misunderstood. The leader must risk being hated. The lover must risk being vulnerable. Without the second life, the first life remains hollow. Nietzsche put it more bluntly, become who you are. Not who you pretend to be, not who others demand you to be, but who you are, in the unity of mask and shadow, light and dark. To become who you are means killing the false self, and that death is just as real, just as frightening, as the death of the body. This is why the double life is not just a private drama. It is the existential battlefield of authenticity. Every day you choose between the safety of the mask and the danger of the truth. Every day you decide whether to live twice, divided, or once, whole. And the question, once again, is merciless: which life will you live before death claims both? We all cultivate a second life to survive the first. It begins innocently, a white lie to avoid conflict, a polite smile when you want to say no, a performance at work that slowly replaces the person who walked in on the first day. But repetition is destiny. What you practice becomes you. The more you rehearse the mask, the more the hidden life must carry what the surface cannot. Resentment, envy, unspent courage, unlived tenderness, they migrate underground, where they grow teeth. You can feel the double life in moments of hesitation. Your mouth moves, but your voice does not. You promise, though you know you cannot deliver. You praise, though you do not respect. The body always keeps the score, a tight jaw, a shallow breath, averted eyes. The second life writes emails you never send. It drafts confessions you delete at 2 a.m. It rehearses arguments that never leave the room. It is not imaginary. It is your unused life, pacing. Jung would say the psyche demands unity, and it will demand it with increasing pressure. First, a whisper. Then a dream you cannot forget. Then a mistake you cannot explain. Then a crisis that forces a choice. The more you refuse the underground, the more it chooses for you. The second life intervenes when the first one refuses to listen. Integration does not mean confessing everything to everyone. That is not honesty, that is compulsion. Integration means aligning what you do with what you know. Fewer alibis. Cleaner nose. Truer yes. It means ending the little bargains that buy approval at the cost of self-respect. The point is not to be brutal, the point is to be whole. How do you begin? Start with one betrayal less each day. Do not say you have time when you do not. Do not say it's fine when it wounds you. Do not agree just to avoid the hour of truth. Replace I should with I will or I won't. Precision is a form of mercy for you and for everyone around you. When you stop selling fragments of yourself, you stop resenting those who bought them. Expect resistance. The mask will tell you that truth will cost you everything: reputation, belonging, comfort. Sometimes it will. But the price of the mask is heavier: the slow corrosion of appetite, the quiet hatred of mornings, the boredom that no amount of entertainment can sedate. People do not burn out from effort, they burn out from division. The double life is friction, and friction is heat without light. Nietzsche would ask a simpler question: which life would you relive? The one where you complied, or the one where you created? The one where you kept the peace, or the one where you said the dangerous sentence and accepted the consequences? Eternal recurrence is not mystical here, it is practical. Live in such a way that if this day returned forever, you would not choke on it. Let that be your compass when the mask reaches for your face. There is a paradox at the heart of the double life. The qualities you admire in others, presence, intensity, play, are stored in the life you hide. You cannot perform them, you must reclaim them. Presence appears when you stop lying. Intensity appears when you stop leaking your courage into silent resentment. Play appears when you are no longer managing impressions every minute of the day. Freedom is not a place, it is a lack of internal contradiction. You will lose some things. The circle that loved your mask may not love your face. The job that rewarded compliance may not reward imagination. The relationship that depended on your silence may not survive your speech. Mourn these losses. Do not curse them. A self you no longer inhabit cannot keep its furniture. Let it go with gratitude for the shelter it once provided, and clarity that it is too small for the person you are becoming. Practical vows help. One dangerous truth per day, spoken calmly. One clean no per day, without apology. One promise kept to yourself, even if no one sees it. 5 minutes of stillness before you answer the message that triggers your second life. A breath before every lie. These are not grand gestures, they are micro-bridges between the two lives. Cross them, and you will discover that the distance is smaller than you feared, and far larger than you imagined. Watch what changes when the lives begin to converge. Sleep arrives. Food tastes like food. Music moves you again. Work becomes a place where you place yourself, not a place you disappear. People who matter step closer, people who fed on your division drift away. You stop envying because you are no longer abandoning. You stop performing because you are no longer afraid of being seen. There is a darker mercy in all this. When the two lives collide, something must die. Not your capacity for love or joy, but the self made of cancellations and postponements. Let it die. Give it a decent burial. Thank it for carrying you through seasons when you did not yet know how to live. Then leave the grave and breathe like someone who has just stepped out of a tight room into winter air. This is not the end of struggle, it is the beginning of a cleaner one. You will still fear. You will still doubt. You will still feel the hand of the mask reaching for you on days when you are tired. But you will know the difference now. You will know the temperature of truth in your body. You will feel the drag of division the moment it begins, and you will choose. Not perfectly, but consciously. And consciousness, repeated, becomes character. So ask yourself, not abstractly, but tonight, what would I do if I refused to live twice? What sentence would I speak? What habit would I end? Whom would I call? Where would I stop pretending? Write it down. Read it in the morning. Do one thing that honors it before noon. Then do another before sleep. This is how the two lives become one, not with revelation, but with rhythm. And if you need a blessing for the road, take this one. May your no be clean, your yes be costly, your voice be steady, and your nights be without rehearsals. May the life you live in the open be the life that returns if time loops forever. May the person who meets death be the same person who met the day. Ruin is not an accident of life. It is its hidden architecture. Every structure, no matter how proud, carries within it the seeds of collapse. And yet, collapse is not the end, it is the opening. Jung saw this with brutal clarity. Individuation, the process of becoming whole, does not begin with achievement. It begins with breakdown. The ego resists, clings, defends, until the pressure of the unconscious shatters it. Dreams erupt, crises unfold, illusions fall away. What feels like destruction is the psyche demanding truth. The false self must crack if the deeper self is to breathe. Nietzsche felt it in his own flesh. His body failed, his mind burned, his life dissolved into isolation. And yet, from the ruins of his health came words that still ignite us. He did not glorify collapse, but he accepted it as the crucible. A more fatty, love your fate, is not born in comfort. It is forged when comfort is stripped away. Ruin is the moment when all the masks we built no longer hold. The career collapses. The relationship dies. The belief system we trusted turns to ash. We fall into silence, into emptiness. It feels like annihilation. But here, beneath the rubble, a strange possibility emerges, to live without disguise. Because when ruin comes, the performance is over. You cannot pretend to be successful when everything is gone. You cannot pretend to be virtuous when your flaws are revealed. You cannot pretend to be immortal when the doctor whispers the truth. Ruin forces honesty. Brutal, merciless honesty. And in that honesty, a doorway opens. Most of us run from this doorway. We patch the ruins, rebuild the mask, rush to fill the silence with noise. But those who stay, those who sit in the ashes, discover something staggering. Nothing is left to protect, and so everything becomes possible. Jung would say, only when the old self dies can a new one rise. Myths echo the same pattern. The hero descends, is broken, humiliated, stripped. Only then does transformation come. Osiris dismembered, Christ crucified, the phoenix reduced to ash. Ruin is the threshold. Nietzsche pressed further. He dared to say yes even here. Not just to joy, but to collapse. Not just to triumph, but to despair. To say yes to ruin itself, to embrace the destruction of what you were, is the fiercest affirmation of life. Because life is not only growth. It is also decay. To love one is to love both. So wholeness does not mean perfection. It does not mean safety. It means carrying your scars as part of your form. It means that the ruins you survived are not obstacles but foundations. It means that the very cracks you feared would destroy you are the lines through which light enters. Think of your own life. The moments you remember most vividly are not the times you played it safe. They are the moments you were broken, undone, forced to see yourself without cover. Betrayal. Loss. Failure. Illness. These are the chapters you never asked for, but they are the ones that wrote you. They taught you that what you are cannot be reduced to what you achieve. They taught you that what survives ruin is more real than what came before. The world worships strength, but ruin teaches depth. The world rewards masks, but ruin tears them off. The world fears endings, but ruin whispers that endings are beginnings in disguise. So what is wholeness through ruin? It is the courage to let collapse do its work. It is to remain in the ashes long enough for something true to emerge. It is to face the death of an identity, a dream, even a body, and discover that what dies is not the whole of you. Wholeness through ruin is the final paradox. To lose is to gain. To break is to open. To descend is to rise. This does not cancel the pain, it intensifies it. But through that pain, the self becomes indivisible. Mask and shadow, life and death, first life and second life, they converge in one. And when death finally arrives, as it always will, you will not meet it as a stranger. You will meet it as the last ruin, the last unveiling, the last chance to be whole. And if you have faced your shadow, if you have lived your double life until it became one, if you have accepted the fire of collapse, then you will meet death not as an intruder, but as a mirror. A mirror that whispers, nothing was wasted. Nothing was false. You are whole because you passed through ruin. You have seen the shadow, waiting in silence. You have faced death, pressing its weight upon every choice. You have walked the double life, mask and hidden self. And you have learned that wholeness only arrives through ruin. This is the human journey. Not perfection. Not escape. But confrontation. To stand before the mirror of existence and admit, I am shadow. I am mortality. I am contradiction. I am broken, and yet I am whole. The night does not lie. It whispers what daylight hides. The question is simple, and it follows you beyond this screen. Will you live divided, rehearsing a mask until death tears it away? Or will you live whole, even if wholeness costs you everything? The choice is already waiting in you, and the night is listening.
Now, which side of you is listening?